Okay, so there's this quality in singing called twang. And there's also like a different thing in singing called twang. Two different things.
Mark Twain.
Not that one, but yeah, so twang, like people will say, oh, country music, twang. A lot of times people are talking about the accent that people will use when they're singing country music, which is one thing. And then in music, there's also this feeling of twang in country music, which a lot of times people will say, oh, that's a really nasal sound. And then there's just twang that's separate from country music twang, that is a quality of tone. So it's like a biting, clear, strong tone quality employed by classical singers. Sometimes it's called the singer's formant. It helps bite through the sound of an orchestra while a singer is singing all alone without a microphone.
What's it called?
The singer's formant.
Formant?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And I'm not going to talk too much about that, but that twang is controlled actually not in your nose, but in your aryepiglottic sphincter, which is located up here. And so if you talk, and put your fingers on your throat, you can feel vibrations coming out of your larynx. And if you wiggle your fingers, you'll make your voice wiggle around. That's your larynx, where your vocal folds are located. And so that's where your voice is being produced, the vibrations that create your voice, which is like the initial production of your sound begins here in your larynx. Right above your larynx is the aryepiglottic sphincter, and it's a ring of these tissues, muscles, tendons, and things here that will squeeze and push down to help you swallow liquid and food. You can feel that if you swallow. And so we want to practice isolating and manipulating at will this aryepiglottic sphincter when we're singing, because it can affect our sound. It can increase or decrease our twang. And so here's the sound of twang. You can think of a bully in a playground. Na 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 boo boo. And I can make that high pitch or a low pitch. Na 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 boo boo. Ah ah. And watch this. With or without the sound coming through my nose.
It's not a nasal sound.
It sounds nasal. And when this was first taught to me, the person used Fran Drescher from The Nanny as an example of a tight aryepiglottic sphincter or a narrow aryepiglottic sphincter. So you can practice trying to produce a sound like that. And plug your nose. And we can try just an E, 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 E. So when I really tighten my sphincter as tight as I can like that, I immediately feel scratch, scratch, scratch. Like, do you feel that sensation?
No.
Okay, well
maybe I'm not doing it right.
That could be. This is difficult to, like I say, isolate
I
and
might be
control.
doing the sound higher up in space instead of down here.
It is possible.
Oh, I felt that.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah,
But we can't actually see if you're doing it or not, unfortunately. But because we'd have to have a scope down your nose or cut your head off, one of the two, to see down in there. And we don't have either of those options available to us. But anyways, we can practice putting our fingertips together like this and making that tight sound, and we'll call that a 1, like the tightest aryepiglottic sphincter position we can find. E, E, E. Yeah, and then we could open as far as we could and see if we can open the sphincter now as wide as we can, all the way to, let's try a 5. And so we're trying to isolate, not move the soft palate, not move the jaw. Like other things may move along with, but we're not trying to move anything else. We're just trying to move the sphincter, okay? So let's go back to 1. E. And now we can hold and sustain the tone as we open from 1 to 10. E. E. And then we can start at 10 and go back to 1. And this is not an exercise to build and strengthen your voice. This is an exercise to notice a contrast between the position of a tight versus an open sphincter. So this is an exercise I would do personally at the end of my practicing, like maybe 1 or 2 times, to remind myself of like what I'm looking for, the sensation I'm looking for, and to try to label the sensation with some adjectives so I can find this placement later. That's going to be the next step, is to be able to place this sphincter where we want while singing. But because the tight position can be too tight and make your voice scratchy, I would not start with the exercise because you can do too much and then have a scratchy voice afterwards. But this is still a valuable exercise for learning, like right versus wrong, so to speak. So now let's see if we can go back to the 1 to the 5 and see if you still have the same 1 and the same 5, or if it's feeling different now. Are you able to find the 1 and the 5 kind of consistently every time, or is it changing quite a bit? So now let's add in a 3. We'll go from 1 to 3. E. Okay, let's do it again. E. And then let's go 1, 3, 5. E. Back to 5, 3, 1. So over this week, you can then, I find a lot of value in doing the same thing several times. So like 1, 3, 5, 5, 3, 1, 1, 3, 5, like how we did 1 and 5 several times. Yeah. So when you get home, do that again, like for a day or 2, and then try adding in 2 and 4 and see if you can find a consistent difference between each of those 5 positions. And we'll build up to 10 over time, hopefully. But of course, just like lifting your soft palate or breathing, first you have to be able to do this technique while not singing. But the goal will be, after you have complete control over this really precise movement, we can add it in while singing. Because you were talking about feeling some strain on some of your higher pitches. So we want to think of opening the back of the pharynx like this direction with lifting the soft palate and having a yawn shape. But this is the sphincter right underneath all of that, which also can sometimes help with reducing strain when we open this way too. Okay. So we want to find the place where the sphincter isn't too far open, where you sound sort of like a singer in the St. Olaf's choir, which is like desirable for that setting, but not for a solo singer really. So we don't want to be this tight where you have like a lot of bite, but there's too much tension as well, so you have some pain. So we want to find somewhere in here where the feeling is very comfortable, but the sound has good ring and freedom at the same time. So it's balanced, not too much space and not too much tightness. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay.